You're listening to Trek FM.
Welcome to From There to Here, Trek FM's 50th Anniversary Star Trek Rewatch. We're going through all 729 Star Trek adventures from Enterprise to Star Trek Beyond and everything in between. I'm Zach Moore, and I'm joined by...
Richard Marquez.
What's up, Richard? How's it going today, man?
Good. Excited about these episodes.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk about 2 episodes of Star Trek Voyager, which I'm now on record for. Everybody knows is my least favorite show, but I will have you know, this episode today, Death Wish, is the reason I signed up for this block, because this is one of my favorite episodes of Voyager and of Star Trek. So we're talking about Death Wish and Lifesigns. So let's get right into it. Let's talk about Death Wish. In this episode, a member of the Q Continuum comes aboard Voyager seeking asylum so he can commit suicide. Man, we're getting all these suicide episodes this block, Rich. I don't know what this is all about. Q arrives on board to stop him, leaving Captain Janeway to meditate on a moral dilemma. So, Kern wants to kill himself. Q here wants to kill himself. Man, we were just heavy
Who's next?
Topics,
I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
Who's next?
We got coming up. Oh my God! You know, I think in Lifesigns she wants to kill herself too.
She does.
What was in the water at Paramount? These
month. Are all like in sequential order of when they were aired too. Oh my gosh!
Exactly.
Jeez.
Wow. Well, you know, let's have a little fun first, and then we can talk about the heavy stuff. So Q, right? This is not John Delancey's Q. This is a different Q. We'll just call him, for the sake of conversation, we'll call him Quinn, because that's the name he gives himself at the end of the episode. I do think it's funny that they're all Q. Do you like that about the Q, that they're all named Q?
Yeah. It's kind of hard to separate them, but yeah.
It's like, what are you doing here, Q? I don't know, Q. They have conversations between each other. It's very funny. This episode, it really, you know, in grand Star Trek tradition, right? It's like a courtroom drama. Voyager convenes a hearing to see if, they will grant Quinn asylum so he can become mortal and kill himself. So Janeway's in a difficult position because she doesn't endorse euthanasia or suicide, or either one, really, and that's what he wants. But she knows if she grants him asylum, that's what he's going to do. And he picks Tuvok. Quinn picks Tuvok to be his defendant. Because for many reasons, one of which is Vulcans have a ritual suicide as well. Mm-hmm. So just another alien culture with ritual suicide. So what did you think of this episode? It's pretty deep things to consider in this show, huh?
Yeah, and let me just say this first, because I was thinking about this in the beginning of the episode. First off, if anyone needs to talk or anything like that when it comes to suicide, there are definitely avenues to. If you're having any problems, there are people out there that can talk to you. There's the Veteran Crisis Hotline. There's also several, which is 1-800-273-8255 is the Veteran Crisis line. And if anyone and anyone outside of that, obviously there's the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, which is 1-800-273-8255. Is that the same number? It is the same number. Okay.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, Richard, because we're not to make light of it. We just discovered, like, oh wow, why do we have all these episodes in a row that hadn't really clicked until now? So, but thank you for bringing that up, Richard, because it is a serious thing, not to be laughed at.
Right, and it's. I mean, obviously they make it into a comedy, but I mean, really, it's a serious episode. So out of the way. Yes, I absolutely love this episode. Especially it's very comical. It's like, oh well, if he didn't do this, and this, Riker wouldn't be here. Sir Isaac Newton wouldn't have had the apple fall on his head, and then of all things, Woodstock would not happen. So yeah, I really like this episode. It's really fun. It's really funny, obviously, until the end.
Well, you mentioned Riker, and we have a great cameo. Basically from Jonathan Frakes here as Riker. And it's funny, the beginning of the episode when Q shows up, he's like, oh, Voyager. I was betting Riker would get that command. And it's like, man, I do wish Riker was the Captain of Voyager. That would be cool, get a Riker series. That reference pays off because we see Riker. And to be a nitpicker here as a nerd, he's wearing his Next Generation comm badge from Before Generations, and yet he knows Janeway is the Captain of Voyager. So I'm not sure about the continuity there, but I just had to throw that out there. Just saying. Could it have killed him to put the Generations com badge on his uniform? And then we wouldn't have that discussion. But anyway, that aside, it was very nice to see Riker, and they didn't, he was just there, and then he was gone. He served his purpose. They didn't try to make a big thing about it being Riker. Had a nice moment where he met Janeway, and then he was, just whisked out of there when his part of being on the witness stand was done. So, and then, love John Delancey's Q. I think, to be honest, I think every other appearance of him outside of Next Generation, not that good. But this one alone justifies him appearing outside of Next Generation this episode because he's great. He's in true form. He's in rare form. John Delancey. He's always fun to watch his Q. But this story actually was about something, and it justified bringing him back instead of the other episodes like Q-less on Deep Space Nine. Just terrible.
Yeah,
not good
it
at all.
wasn't that good. Yeah.
And something they had to address if you're going to bring Q on Voyager was, hey, could you snap your fingers and get us home, please? Because it's a trial and Q has his, interests here. They use getting Voyager home as a bribe to Janeway. Like, hey, vote in our favor and we'll send you guys home. And man, that is a very tempting offer, right? And she already doesn't want Quinn to win and kill himself. So it's like, oh my gosh, how can I do this? Once again, we knew they were going to blow up the ship in Dreadnought. We knew they were going to get home in Death Wish here. But it was a very good angle, which they had to address, I think, in this episode.
Yeah, but could you imagine if let's say he gets out or something like that? He can time travel. Apparently, they can go to the beginning of the birth of the cosmos, so clearly they can go any time. But could you imagine if he was pissed off and he got out of that asteroid?
Yeah,
you didn't give me asylum.
That's true. You talk about going to the beginning of the universe. They also go become a Christmas ornament at some point. Now, I have to think. I don't know if I just imagine this in my head, but there had to have been a commercial, right? Because this is around the time the Star Trek Voyager ornament came out, right? So I have to think, and people look it up on YouTube. Let's do some research here and try to find it. But I have to think they used that in a commercial. We seem to be tethered to a large plant, Captain. It's just such a perfect product tie-in for the Hallmark ornaments. Did you ever have the Hallmark ornaments when you were younger?
No, I have a few of them. I don't have. I don't think I don't have the Voyager. I have the horror one, the 50th anniversary one, and a couple others I can't think of off the top of my head.
Man, yeah, my parents were. I was fortunate. My parents were Trekkies, so we have every ornament up to a certain point. But we have the original Enterprise, the Galileo, the D, the Voyager when it came out. But I have to think they used the clip from this episode in a commercial for the Voyager ornament, right? So yeah, good stuff here though. And then they visit the Q continuum. That was pretty cool, huh?
I mean, it looks a little boring. I mean, I can't imagine it. What was it? They said they were in the new era or something like that, or the second. Yeah,
the new era, the new age. They use that terminology quite a few times. When the new age began, people were talking and this and that, and now it's just nothing else to say. And it's an interesting look at immortality because people don't. They're like, oh yeah, sure, I want to live forever, but do you really? I mean, that's a high philosophy concept. Is what Star Trek does great. It takes that. I mean, immortality, suicide, these big issues like a philosophy, and puts them in just an entertaining hour of television that really makes you think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it looks very boring. I mean, I would love, if they would have just dove into what was the new era, what was the old era, why is it the way it is? I mean, I guess we really don't know much about Q. Maybe it'll be in Discovery.
Oh, maybe so. I don't know. John Delancey, I don't know if he can pull off Next Generation era Q anymore, but I wouldn't mind seeing AQ for sure pop up in Star Trek Discovery. Perhaps Trelane, but anyway, that's its own conversation. And then, ultimately, Janeway decides to give him asylum, and he picks the name Quinn, and one scene later, he decides to kill himself. And Q is actually the one that assists in a suicide, because, Quinn his rebellion had reignited the flame of rebellion that was in Q, because as they reference in this episode, Q had been kicked out of the continuum before and stripped of his powers for being a troublemaker. So they're kind of kindred spirits in a way.
Mm-hmm. Overall, good episode. I love it.
Yep. Yeah, definitely one of my favorite Voyager episodes. One of Voyager's best. But speaking of other episodes of Voyager,
Lifesigns.
So in this episode, the Doctor falls in love with a Vidian patient whose life he saved. Meanwhile, Tom Paris begins to act insubordinate. Now, he's already been acting insubordinate, but that's okay, Memory Alpha. This is really kick it up a notch because Tom comes to blows with Chakotay in this episode. It's pretty crazy. I'm like, all right, Tom, I know you kind of have an attitude problem, but like shoving him on the bridge and all that stuff. So that subplot that we mentioned a couple episodes ago in Dreadnought has kind of taken up to the next notch. But that's like the B plot of this episode. The A plot is about the doctor falling in love with his patient. And look, I love the doctor, so I really liked all those parts of the episode. But where do you stand on Lifesigns, Richard?
Really, I think the whole entire story is actually the whole real story about the Vidian is actually the B plot. I mean, because obviously the A plot would be for me, it's the drama between Tom and Chakotay because, later on it blows up later on down the road.
Well, it actually leads somewhere is what you're saying.
Right, exactly, yeah. But I mean, definitely lots of obviously identity crisis and imagery problems. I mean, just the way you look, I guess. I mean, there's a really good message about it's not what's on the outside, it's what's in the inside that matters the most. And obviously through the lens of Star Trek, it's the best way to really describe it. So I mean, yeah, I like it. I mean, it's a good Doctor episode. I mean, it brings him out more. And how he sees his own existence, and yeah, I think it's a great episode.
Yeah. I look at this one a lot like In Theory on the Next Generation, where Data he's learning to date people and have relationships, and actually, and hey, as I've said, Voyager least favorite show. This episode does it better than TNG did it. I feel Voyager gets a lot of flack for being TNG light, but I feel like in this context at least, it did that a lot better. I really enjoy the doctor's exploration into romance more than Data's. It was just the whole awkwardness after their first date. He's like, well, good night, and it's just it's very relatable. It's funny to see this as he's learning about these things. He's running diagnosis because you think there's something wrong with him because he's falling in love with this woman. It's very interesting. And then he has Kes to talk to, and I miss. This is another reason I like early Voyager. I miss Kes. Kes was a good person for the Doctor to play off of. Yeah,
I mean, and there was more wiggle room for the Doctor. At least it was it was programmed however it was programmed, with a nasty bedside manner. Obviously, it's able to grow and everything. Whereas Data, you had to have the emotion chip. Well, we never saw the emotion chip until God knows when. Throughout
the movies,
exactly the movies. Yeah, I mean they had to have something like that occur for him to change. But in this one, obviously he can program himself and he's able to learn and grow. So that I guess that's the good news. On how it's a little bit better in Voyager than it ever was in TNG.
And you'll rarely hear you say that, so that's high praise coming from me, I will say. So they she names him what is it, Schmallis? Is that his name? Yeah,
Schmallis.
And so she likes him. She obviously is attracted to him romantically, but she names him after her uncle, which is like, that's an odd decision, right? If you're romantically attracted to someone, you remind me of my uncle. Let me give you his name, but
yeah, maybe it's a different family dynamic. That
what the
father was
Vidians
never
do.
there. I don't know.
Yeah, who knows? Another thing I really liked is when he went to Tom Paris for advice, right? He says, "Mr. Paris, I assume you've had a great deal of experience being rejected by women." Which is...
Yeah, that was quite funny. It was like, rejected? Yeah.
This is the classic, his bad bedside manner and lack of social understanding. And again, when Kes is like, "Oh, you need to tell her how you feel," he's like, "Okay, I think I will." So he's like in the middle of performing this brain surgery on his Vidian patient. He's like, "By the way, I have romantic feelings for you. Do you feel the same? Would you like to go out?" He's like,
"Wait, what?"
You see the look on Kes's face. She's like, "Oh no, he's doing it wrong."
And she even knows, and she's only 2 years old.
Yeah, exactly. So, anyway, just that's the kind of stuff that's like so good about seeing the Doctor explore his, not his humanity, but I don't know what you would call it, but his selfhood, his individuality. But that's just a great subplot that goes on throughout the whole series of Voyager, with him, and then creating, and yes, it's a little contrived where he creates a holographic body for this woman, but that's what makes it pretty much all possible because they're both holograms, and they connect in that way. And then, as we were talking about earlier, there comes a point where she just wants to die, her physical body, and just live out, just a few more days as a hologram and let her physical body die because she doesn't want to go back to that life. And, the message here is, as we were saying earlier, it's not just about how you look, life is worth living, and all that stuff. And these are good messages to remember about Star Trek. Yeah, and let us, to wrap this up about, the suicide stuff, serious stuff. Star Trek stance is always, look, life is worth living, and it is. It is, and that's important to remember, and that's what all these stories are trying to tell us, yes, we had a couple days ago when we were talking about Sons of Moog, Quinn here, the Vidian here, like, they're all like, look, that's not the answer, that's not the way. And as Richard was saying earlier, please, if you guys are feeling that way and are down about stuff, like, contact somebody, talk to somebody. If you don't have someone in your own life, call those numbers or go to those websites, get those resources to help you, because that is not the answer.
Right. And, it's also, just to add a little bit more, I mean, because I work with veterans, and, one of the, just reaching out to anyone, really. I mean, even on Facebook or something like that, just private message someone that you might even not even know that person, but there are some people that are out there. There's a chance there's at least one person out there that's willing to listen to you, and talking about it actually definitely helps. I mean, it definitely helps, because I've been reached out to before by a couple of friends in the military, and it's very important that you be that one that, and it's even bigger honor that they even come to you. That's even bigger. I mean, to even listen to someone about their problems and then help them out to cope with it. So yeah, just like Zach said, please, if anyone feels those kind of feelings, just please talk to someone, or those numbers as well.
Alrighty, Richard. Well, if people want to talk to you on the internet, where can they find you?
Well, they can find me on Twitter at xransom. And also, I'm on Facebook at the Babel Conference.
And as for me, you can find me here on Trek FM every Monday on Standard Orbit, our original series podcast. Personally, I'm on Twitter at MoronZach. That's MOOREONZACH. And I'm also the host of my own podcast called Always Hold On to Smallville, where we talk about each and every episode of that young Superman TV show. And we're on Twitter at Always Smallville. All right, well, Richard and I will be back tomorrow to talk about A Session from Deep Space Nine and Investigations from Voyager. See you then. All right. Well, Richard and I have 2 more episodes with you. We'll be back tomorrow with Ascension and Investigations. No, we won't, because it's called Session. What? A Session?
I didn't even hear it. I was like, what?